I've got a new Procreate stamped brush kit out today. It's called the Super Cute Collage Brush Kit, and it makes creating lettering like this or even illustrations super easy to do. So it includes 45 different stamps, and then it also includes a monoline at the top just because it's easier to have it within your brush kit. That's not included in the 45 stamps. And then you'll have this super cute color palette and a 10-page PDF quick guide, getting started sample artwork. Standard for what usually comes with my brush sets. But whenever I release a new brush kit, you know I like to do a tutorial with it as well. So I'm going to show you how I made this main artwork for the brush kit, and also wanted to show you real quick some other things I made. All right, so that is the hero art, and then I made this graphic for, it could go on my blog, social media, showing you how to use the frames and different ways to use some of the brushes. So I altered my logo just a bit to make it work better with this style. And then of course some stamp art. That's a collage, is always really cute. This set is also great for digital scrapbooking, whether you're actually gonna print the pages and put it in something, or you just wanna share like vacation pictures on social media or things like that. It would also be great for students to do fun note taking as well. And then this is one I did and put it on a box. So just a fun little Happy Mail design. So that's just some sample artwork, but you can do so much with this kit, and it's really easy to use even if you're new to Procreate. So we will walk through creating this one on its own. You might notice for the main tutorial, all you need is this brush kit. But I know a lot of you buy a lot of my brush kits. Thank you for that. So I also did a few fun little details with the Maximalist brush kit and the Stardust. So I'll walk you through that as well. All optional, but it makes it easier, and you could draw certain things like this little starburst. You could draw them by hand, that little wavy detail, and then the background checkerboard, and then the washi tape detail. Pairs super well. I try to think about when I create new brush kits, how they can pair well together with past brush kits, but in a way that makes it completely optional to creating the main style. So this is what we'll create together today, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. If you're new to lettering, don't stress out. You can totally just use a font, but we will walk through each little detail step by step, and you'll have a fun little piece to share at the end. To get started, I just have a square canvas open, and I've got my letters roughly planned out. You can just sketch this. You can use, like I mentioned, the font feature. I'll show you that in a second. And I do have each letter on its own layer because we're going to keep a lot of layers and groups to keep this organized as we start adding stamps and details. So I've drawn all my letters, but if you want to use the text feature instead, all you have to do is have a new layer, click the wrench icon, and click add text. And let's say you wanted to start with the S. You do your S, and then you can actually select all and run through the different fonts on your iPad and pick something different. So you could do all the same font. You could make yours mixed lettering like I have. But if you're new to lettering and you don't feel comfortable drawing them from scratch to start, go ahead and do that. So if you want to pause the video and just get super cute, or whatever phrase you want to letter really, on the iPad. Again, do each one on its own layer. You can see I have it all laid out here. That will make it a lot easier as we get into adding stamps. This tutorial is more about the stamps than lettering, but I do have other videos on lettering from scratch on my YouTube channel if you would like to watch those. But for the purposes of not making this an extremely long video, it's probably already gonna be quite long just with the stamps. We're gonna start with our letters already down and then go from there so you can see the stamp and detail and shading techniques. All right, moving on to letter U. So with these stamps, if you use a stamp for every letter, it can look a little too chaotic. So what I like to do is just outline some letters and keep them a little more simple. So let's go ahead. We've got let's rename this stamp or doily, whatever helps you remember. And then we're gonna swipe right on all those S layers, group them, and then we'll rename that group S. And that just keeps your layers a little more condensed and easier to work with. And of course our U is below it and we need it on top. So we're just gonna drag and hold it to the top right there. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is add a little bit of shading on this one as well. So again, swipe left, duplicate, tap your bottom layer, and then I think I'm gonna go for this kind of gray blue color. Tap it in, and this time, instead of dragging my shadow to the right, I'm gonna pull it to the left. Just a hair. I'm gonna have that one be really small. And then again, you can grab your monoline brush, and if it needs to be smaller, you're just connecting the corners. And again, since I made this such a slight dimensional aspect, there's not much filling in to do really. All right, so now we're gonna tap our S layer, add one more layer on the bottom, and I'm going to again grab that kind of, whoops, if you accidentally do that, you just tap and hold to delete. So I'm gonna grab that same blue color. I'm gonna make my monoline a little bigger, and then I'm just gonna outline it, kind of creating a sticker effect. And again, we want it to be hand-drawn, cute, not too precise. So I'm just gonna quickly kind of create my outline, eyeballing the distance so it looks pretty close. As long as your shape is closed and you have no open gaps, you should be able to drag and drop your color right in. And then you can see anywhere that you might need to grab your eraser tool and clean up. You can see I had a little bit of an overshoot there. And then that looks pretty good. That also allows you to select all your layers and move them around and edit if needed. I'm gonna go ahead for now and leave it quite close because I know I'm gonna add a big stamp under the P. So again, you can rename those layers if you want to. I'll just rename that U again as well. So I'll swipe right on all three, click group, and now my U is complete. Moving on to the letter P, I am gonna tap my layer below the P, add a new layer since I want that underneath, and I am going to use, I wanna do an oval shape this time since I've done some other shapes. And I wanna do the doily again. So I'm gonna grab that one and this kind of deep goldy color. All right, that's kind of large, so I'm gonna move my size down just a bit, and then I'm gonna grab my arrow tool, make sure I'm on uniform, and resize it to my liking. I'm gonna go for about that right there, maybe a little bit smaller. And then I'm gonna drag and drop that color there so it fills in, and I wanna do a lighter yellow inside, so I'm gonna go for that. So when I decide on these colors, I just think about what colors like help it be the most legible and readable. And so sometimes that means playing around with different colors, 2-finger tapping to undo and changing it. But I think that looks pretty legible. And then maybe I wanna make it just a little bit smaller like that. So that one is extra easy. I'll rename that stamp, swipe right so both layers are selected, click group, rename P, and then move on to the next letter. So you're kind of getting the idea of how easy this is. It's just a lot of layering and kind of shifting things around. Since I have this complete, it's gonna go a little faster because you're working off a design I already finished. But when you're working from scratch, you're gonna have to do a little more planning and shifting and playing around to get the design just like you want it. All right, moving on to letter E, same process. We're gonna click the layer below, add a new layer, and then this time I wanna do a Polaroid. So I did some with line work and some with that are solid. That way, if you want to do more of a line art style, you can. If you want to do a solid style, you can as well. So that just makes it a little easier than sitting and tracing things. I like to have both options. All right, so I know that I use a lighter blue over here, so I need to balance that with some more blue over here. So I think I'm gonna grab this slightly lighter blue and just stamp it on the page and see what I think. Yeah, I think I like that color. And I think that's what I used originally as well. Then I am gonna just arrow tool and resize again, and then angle this a bit. Maybe like that. Just so the E fits inside nicely. All right, and now I want to add a piece of washi tape at the beginning, or the top of my Polaroid. So I'm going to add a new layer above it again, and then I'm going to go grab the solid washi tape and a pink color, maybe this medium pink, and I'm just going to stamp it on the page, grab my arrow tool, resize and rotate so that it fits nicely. Maybe I want it to be just a little smaller, and do that there. So you could leave that just as is, or if you have my Maximalist brush kit, it is perfect for adding textures and details. So I'm gonna grab the bold stripes just to show you and add a new layer above it. I'm gonna use the exact same color, but I'm gonna click color burn so that it changes the color on my layer. And then I'm just gonna color those. Actually, I'm gonna do the finer stripes. All right, and now I want that to stay confined within my washi tape. So all I have to do is tap that layer and click clipping mask. I can leave those angled. Oop, what did I do? Or if you want the stripes to be more straight up and down, since we angled that, you can change that as well. You can also use your arrow tool to make it fit within the stamp just like you want it. And then if you want it to be more subtle, you can open your layer and play with the opacity. All right, so I'll rename that washi. I'll rename this texture. And I'll rename this one Polaroid. Oh, and one thing we need to do on the Polaroid still is it is empty right now. So if we turn our background color off, we can see that it's empty, and we don't want it to be empty because when we add our background color, it will look funny. So all we're gonna do is use a white. So I'm just gonna drag that to white and then fill my Polaroid. And now I can swipe right on all of those, group them, and rename letter E. Letter E is now complete. Moving on to letter R. Moving on to letter R, again, same process. I'm gonna tap the layer below, add a new layer, and then I'm gonna refer to I think I did a slightly darker outline on this one. So I'll go back to my super cute brush set, and I'm gonna do just this scalloped rectangle. And I'm gonna use the medium gold. And again, just stamp it down on the page and then adjust it here. And we're gonna make it smaller. And you can also, if you need to, if you want it to be slightly shorter, you can click freeform and just kind of shift it up and down a wee bit to adjust the size. Try to get my angle a little more. And then I will fill that one with yellow. Actually, want that to be maybe just a hair bigger so I can add a shadow. So I can go back to uniform and just stretch it back up again. Okay. And now I want a slight shadow on this R2 or dimension. So again, I'll swipe left, duplicate, tap my bottom one, and I'm gonna make it this dark navy color again to balance the one that we have in the U. And then just drag it down, grab my monoline again, and then connect those edges together. All right, and then to balance this one out, we're gonna add one of the cute paper clips in the corner here. So again, we want a new layer. We want it above our R, or at least above your stamp. I'm gonna go ahead and put it at the top. Add a new layer. I'm gonna grab the solid version of the heart paper clip and the really bright pink. I'm just gonna stamp it on the page and then grab my arrow tool. I'm on uniform. And now I'm gonna shrink it down and rotate it so it fits nicely at the corner of my, let's see, about right there. And then I want the bottom of my paper clip to be darker. So I'm gonna tap it and click Alpha Lock, and that's gonna mean we can color only on the letter. So I can always go back and grab that dark color, or I can grab my color selection tool, this little square, drag it to that, and that's an, need to get my monoline brush for coloring. And that's an easy way to get a color and reuse it. And then you're just gonna color right on your design. And because the Alpha Lock is on, it will not color outside of your design. And then once it's colored in, maybe you wanna adjust its position or angle. Sometimes it's a little easier to see once you do that. All right, so now I'm gonna rename that paper clip and stamp. Swipe right on all of them, group, and rename R. So now we've got our first word complete. We'll move on to our second, and then we can add some extra details, and then I'll show you a few places where adding shading looks really nice as well. For letter C, I decided to balance the Polaroid with another Polaroid, only we're gonna do it a lot larger. So again, a new layer under your C. I'm gonna use medium pink, go back to the solid Polaroid, stamp that down, use our arrow tool, change the angle. And it's okay if it goes into the U because we can move our U up and adjust this a little bit later on. So for now, I'm gonna put it just kind of center my C, maybe make it a tiny bit smaller, right about there. And again, we wanna fill that. So I'm gonna grab white. So I'm just on classic here and I'm just gonna drag it all the way in the corner to be white. And now my Polaroid is filled. And we're gonna add a stamp on this one as well. So again, a new layer, it can be above your C or above the Polaroid you just made. And I'm gonna grab this cute little heart flag and medium teal, stamp it on my page, and then reduce the size so that it fits nicely kind of right there. Maybe even a little smaller. And then I'm gonna fill the heart with a nice light pink. Nope. Whoop. Actually, I'm gonna fill it with a medium pink. I think that's what I did originally. And I think my Polaroid was originally the bright, bright pink. So I'm gonna change that. You can just see how it changed my white on the Polaroid. To stop that again, you just have to reduce your color threshold. So that's got a light pink tint, that goes white. So you just have to play with that sometimes when you're using color fill. All right. Now, one thing you can do, and I did this on certain pieces, we'll go ahead and do it right now just so you can see. If you want that flag to have a slight shadow as if this were real paper art, what I do is click duplicate, tap my bottom layer, click the magic wand icon, click hue, saturation, brightness, take your brightness all the way down, and that's gonna make it black. And then I'm just gonna do like 1 or 2 taps towards the end of my page, and it has this shadow. And then I'm going to tap my N and reduce the opacity so it's more subtle. And if I turn that off and on, you can see how that just gives it a little dimension. And if you wanted it to be blurred, you could tap your magic wand, click Gaussian blur, and I usually just do like a 1 or 2%. Keep it super subtle. All right. And then last thing we're gonna do is add a little dimension to this C as well. So swipe left, duplicate, click your bottom one. I'm gonna do, I think I'll do this color teal. And then again, just bring it that way a wee bit. Grab my monoline and connect the ends. And then I might just swipe right on both of those and just reposition my C just a little bit. All right, so I'll rename that flag, rename shadow, and rename Polaroid. And again, that just helps you when you come back to these later and want to adjust something. It's easier to see what you're working with. All right, done with letter C. We'll move on to again for letter U. We need to grab it and drag it above our C so it's visible, and then add a new layer so we can add our stamp. This time I'm gonna do this square postage stamp, and I'm actually gonna stay on the teal color I already have. Stamp it down, grab my arrow tool, and then I just want to layer these a little bit. And I might angle it this way, just a tiny bit. And then fill the center with my light yellow color. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then this is another one of those where we have, you know, a lot of stacking going on. So this is one where I would probably swipe left to duplicate my stamp, tap on the bottom layer, change the brightness all the way down, tap it once or twice, tap the magic wand again, Gaussian blur, 2%, and then tap the opacity and reduce it so it's more subtle. So you can kind of decide where you think things might have a little shadow and a little dimension, and do that as often as you want throughout your pieces. All right, so then we will swipe right, make sure everything's highlighted, click group, and rename U. So especially as our letters start to get a little out of order, it's really helpful to have them all labeled and organized. All right, letter T. So I'm gonna again add a new layer below my T. This time I am going to use this cute little banner frame. I'm gonna go with a light pink color here. Maybe even this kind of light purpley. Let's try that. Yeah, I like that. All right, so then again, like I said, if you wanna resize it with freeform, I'm gonna make it a little more narrow and kind of fit the shape of the T better. That looks pretty good. All right, so now I am going to, let's go ahead and rename that banner. So now I'm gonna tap it and click Alpha Lock so we can color right on it to add some detail. So I wanna do this same color, so I tapped this little square, and to get that, you have to make sure you're on the brush here. So you're on your brush, tap that square, and we wanna go back to our monoline again, and I'm carefully going to color the bar. Not worried about getting it on the string. So one helpful thing when you're going on the edge here, oops. So draw your line, hold it down so it gets straight. And I caught that pretty well, but you can always click edit line and then shift it over just slightly. See how easy it is to adjust then, and make sure you get it exactly where you want it. And then I'm gonna pick this dark teal, or actually navy, and carefully color my string. You can color the nail too if you want. I actually decided I wanted my nail to be teal, so I grabbed a teal color, and then because we distorted it, it's not a perfect circle anymore. I happen to want it to be a perfect circle, so I'm gonna add a new layer above, stamp a dot, and shift that into place. And then I'm just going to pinch to merge it down. And your layers will take the name of whatever is on bottom. So if that wasn't named yet, it would just say untitled or whatever. If it is named, then it'll take the name of that. And you can see I ever so slightly got too far with my navy, so I'll just recolor that a little bit like that. And this one, we're gonna add a little dimension to our T as well. So swipe left, duplicate. I am gonna make this a deep teal, I think. Maybe let's try medium actually, since we just used deep. And then, yeah, let's do that. And again, I'll just connect my edges. All right, so then we will move on to our last letter and add some details. All right, letter E. For this one, we've done a lot of stamps actually. So the only one we didn't do a stamp on is letter U. So for letter E, I'm gonna balance it out by not using a stamp again. So because we are on our bottom most layer, we can't tap this to add a layer above it because we're just gonna pull up the background. So what you do is just click anywhere, grab your layer, and then you can tap and drag it below your E. Oh, and I also forgot to group my T. So I'll do that real quick. All right, so I've got my bottom layer. I'm gonna go for this medium teal again, and I'm on monoline. So what I'll do is just kind of draw an oval shape where you can make it a perfect circle. I think I kept mine a little oblong, and then you can click edit ellipse and kind of shift it into place however you want it. And then I'll just fill that. And I want that to be above my T so it shows better. So I'm just gonna select both layers by swiping right and drag them above my T. All right, so now I will duplicate that E, grab a darker teal, and again, add a little dimension. Still on monoline, connect those edges. You can see it's kind of repetitive, but it's easy and it's fun. I put on a show a lot while I'm working. So that is that, and now we're gonna add some specific letter details, and then we'll add some overlay details. And I ended up adding a frame to mine as well, which is one of the stamps. So I'll show you that as well. And the textures I added in case you have the Maximalist kit or decide to get it, I'll show you how I added those textures as well. To add some letter details, I'm gonna grab white and my monoline brush. And the first detail I wanna add is on my S. So I'm gonna go back up to my S, open it up, and I'm gonna add some highlights to my S. And I'm just gonna keep it really simple. That's a pretty good size. You can play with your brush size if you want it to be a little smaller. So when I do highlights, I usually just do a couple that are maybe a little line and a dot, and then a normal line, and then a normal line. All right, that keeps that pretty simple. So that is it for the S. And then, oh, I forgot to group my E. I'll just rename that circle. All right, for our letter U, again, I'll tap my top layer, and then I drew 3 little X's. And then I added another layer below that and grabbed the darker pink. And then I made this a little bigger. Oop, a little bigger still. Test that. All right. And then I stamped it as if it were holes, and these are stitched through. And that was just kind of a random little detail I added on the fly, but I thought it came out kind of cute. If you want to rename those, go ahead. If not, sometimes when I get to the end, I'll get lazy about renaming things, and I know what's on there, so I'll just close it up. Let's see. And then we're going to add some highlights to our bottom letter U. So open that up. And again, we're just going to add, oop, I need to go back to my original size. So you can see these lines here. This is because I wanted to remember sizes. So if I drag my brush to this large size and for whatever reason want to go back to that, I can tap a plus and then that automatically gets me back to that size. To remove it, I can tap and go back. So this small size here, I use a lot, the 2%, so I have a line there so I can get back to it and be using the exact same size. I also want to go back to white, so I'll draw a little highlight there, a small one there, and maybe a slightly bigger one there. Pretty good. All right, and now on the letter E, I'm just gonna add a few simple dots. So I'm gonna increase the size again, maybe even bigger, and add 3 dots on the E like that. Again, these are just random things I decide to add for creating balance and interest in my piece. On the letter T, I decided to add some hearts. You can draw those in. I actually use stamps for my folk art kit, but I'm just gonna go ahead and draw them in this time to show you. So I did 2 little hearts here to kind of balance the empty space. So I just draw them and then drag and drop color. And if you want one to be smaller, you can use your selection tool, freehand around it, tap your arrow, maybe adjust the size to be a little smaller so they're not too close to the same. And maybe I'll make that heart a little smaller too. These are just picky little details you can kind of play with. All right, I think that's it for all our letter details. So now we'll add an overlay with some extra fun details at the top and then do our background. All right, so now I am going to add a layer at the very top. I'm gonna grab my monoline and kind of the second darkest navy color. And I love to do little curly cues with these just because I think they look fun. So I'm gonna add one like that. Whoop, 2-finger tap to undo. Sometimes you have to redraw it a few times to get it nice. And then to balance that, I'm gonna do one here. I want like a big loop, a small loop, and then a loop like that. And then I'm just gonna draw a heart with a loop in it. And again, these are things I just kind of play around with until I like how they come out. And then with design, you've probably, if you watch my videos, you heard me say this, but usually when you work in groups of odd numbers, it's most visually appealing to the eye. So I make sure that I have 3 of those for balance. And then I'm gonna do another one of those hearts. And I have lots of hearts, so I'm not gonna be as concerned about having 3 of that particular heart. And then I made this a little bigger and decided to just randomly add some fun little dots down here. So I did 1, 2, space that a little better, and then 3. That one I misdid a little bit. All right. And now I'm gonna add a few more stamps. So let's start with a heart stamp. I'm gonna do, again, like I mentioned, 3 of these. So let's start with a dark yellow or the dark gold color. And again, I'm thinking about balance. So I don't have any gold over here. I have here, here, here. So I need some gold over here. So I'm just going to stamp this down. You know what, let's do that on a new layer so it's easier to manipulate. So new layer, stamp your heart down, and then kind of adjust the size so that it ends at the bottom of your little curly cue. And then I'll fill that with the light yellow. And then I wanna do the same thing with a pink one. Let's do bright pink. I'm gonna keep adding new layers and then I'll merge them down at the end, but that just makes it easier for me to be able to edit and adjust. So I'll keep that one about that size. And then I'm gonna fill it with this kind of light purple color again. All right. And then one more time, I wanna add a blue one here at the bottom. So I'll grab the medium blue since I used the dark here. And then again, make it a little smaller so it fits better right here. And then do kind of a lighter blue color inside. And I'm happy with the placement of all those. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge all of these detail layers together like that, just pinch them together. And then we're gonna do one more stamp. So again, I'm gonna add a new layer and I'm gonna use this heart stamp with the almost dark blue color. And then change the size a bit. And then fill it with this light purple color again. Let's try, whoops, I'm gonna try pink instead. Again, just being picky with the details, but you can kind of play with those and decide what colors you like best. Yeah, we'll go with that for now. I might play with that later and change it. It's pretty similar to this, but it's not bad. All right, and here is where I started using some of my Stardust stamps just because they're always quick and easy and fun. So if you have my Stardust kit, I used, let's see, I think I decided on stamp 8, and I'm gonna add a new layer again. And I just kind of, again, I'm gonna think about balancing color. So let's try stamping one right there. That's a little big, so I'm gonna reduce the size and then make it a little smaller. Add a teal one, and then add a gold one about there. And then I did 2 more stamps with this stamp number 12 here. I did a gold one there. I'm gonna circle it and adjust the angle. And then I'm gonna do a pink one over here. Again, circle it, adjust the angle. And then we're gonna do one final detail on our heart. So I'm gonna go back to the Super Cute set, back to my Super Cute monoline, and grab that same size that I have marked there and that kind of deep blue color we've been using for all our details. I'm on a layer here where I am gonna be working above my heart, so I'm gonna just stick with that, and then I'm gonna draw a hashtag on this. And then little plus sign on this one. And that feels pretty nice and balanced to me. And then I think I may have added a shadow like on that Polaroid and a couple other little things, but even without it, it looks fine, especially since there's so much detail. If we were to turn off the detail shadow on that stamp, it wouldn't, you know, be super duper noticeable. I just merged my detail layers together and named them details. And now we want to add a frame at the back. So again, I'm gonna come as close to the bottom as I can and add a new layer and then drag and drop it to the bottom here. And now this is just an extra step. This piece is great as is, but if you wanna add a little extra detail, I am gonna grab doodled frame number 1 and do a test stamp. I don't want it to go off the page because Procreate cuts that off. All right, perfect. Now I want it to be the other direction, so I'm just gonna tap it and click rotate 45 and then manually make it slightly bigger than my lettering art. All right, that works well. Now we're gonna add some color. So I want to make my external little scallops all this same exact color. So I'm just gonna drag and drop that into it and then click continue filling, and then it'll take a minute, but I'm gonna tap the color into all of these. Oops, 2-finger tap to undo. All right, done. Now I want to use this as a reference layer and add some more detail. So I'm gonna add a new layer, drag my frame to the top. We can go ahead and rename that frame. And now I'm gonna turn it into a reference layer, and that allows us to fill color on another layer but stay within the confines of the frame. So let's say I wanted to grab this, I'm gonna go for the medium blue color, and I want it to be right here, but it's on its own layer, but it stays within the confines of my frame. And now I wanna add pink to the hearts, but I again want them on their own layer. So I'm gonna add a new layer, grab pink, drag and drop to the heart, click continue filling, fill my other two hearts. And you could leave it outline style like that. It looks great. If you want to change this, you can turn your reference layer off, and then on your frame, click alpha lock. And then let's say you want this line, let's go back to our monoline brush. Let's say you want it to be the same blue and not have an outline. All you have to do with that alpha lock on is color those in. So I'm gonna grab it until, hold my brush down so it makes a straight line, and then you can quickly color those. I actually do like the outline style, but originally I did this, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then same thing with the hearts. If you want to be able to make those the same color, just grab that color and color in that detail. Oh, and one thing we do need to do is add some white to the frame. Just like with the Polaroid, if we turn that background off, it's not there. So again, I'm going to, I can turn off alpha lock now and make this a reference layer, and then grab white and fill my frame. That way when we add a background color, it's still filled in. So you see that? And then it also makes it easier for us to add that stripey detail. So now we can pick a background color. So sometimes I'll add a new layer and do that. Sometimes you can just click this because it makes it easy to play with. I'm gonna go for that light purple color. And I want my whole design to be just a tiny bit smaller. So let's go ahead and select all of that and call this frame. And then if I want it all to be a tiny bit smaller, I just have to select everything, click my arrow tool, make sure I'm on uniform, and I can just shrink it down a tiny bit. And if you want to make sure it's perfectly centered, come to Canvas, click Drawing Guide, edit Drawing Guide, make sure your grid size is max, so you just have these, see, it can be like different sizes. So I just like it at max. And then I can see the lines to center it perfectly. And then I can just turn my drawing guide back off. All right, so for the frame, what I did is add some squiggle details. So on your white layer in your frame, add a new layer above it. And then with the Maximalist kit, I wanted something super subtle. So I picked these wavy lines and I picked a light blue color. And then I'm just gonna color those right on my square. So just hold your pencil down and color the whole thing. And you can see right now that's going on my background as well. To fix that, all we have to do is tap it and click that clipping mask so it stays confined. It's also going over our hearts. So we need our hearts and our blue frame part to be up here at the top. All right, so now everything looks as it should. So that's a super fast and easy way to add just a little extra detail. And then I did the same thing with the background. I'm gonna go ahead and close my frame. Background is there. I need a new layer. So I'm going to add one more new layer, drag and drop it to the bottom. And I'm gonna use this bold checkerboard and this slightly darker purple. And now I'm just gonna add that to the background. So again, I'm just holding my pencil down and coloring until it's all complete. And then that is really bold and busy. So I like to make it a little more subtle. So I just open this, tap the N, and drag it to maybe like a 20%. And then we get a lot more subtlety, and that is it. So again, you're gonna play with it. You can add extra details. You can change what I did. You know what, I missed two things that I originally did in this. So I'm gonna go back to my details panel. And if you go in your recent brushes, a lot of times things you've used recently will be there. So I'm just gonna add one more little detail here on my, on the same layer. See, can't edit it. So I'm gonna add a new layer. Oh, actually 2-finger tap till it goes away. New layer, so much easier to edit. And I also, there was one other detail I left out. On this little thing, I added some simple highlights as well. Again, minor stuff, but in that one, since it's so small, I might change my brush size and make it even smaller and just do tiny little details like that. All right, again, that's just a nitpicky thing, but those are the kind of things you'll kind of decide as you're working. Like this one, I might go ahead and add a shadow, things like that. But overall, that is your design. And then you can click share and export it as whatever format you want to use to share it on Instagram. I would do the JPEG if I was wanting to maybe use just part of this design and take that part out and maybe even my frame out and just share that so I can put it, like, for example, I put that at the top of the brush stamp guide. So I do that and then I click share as the PNG or PNG file to my MacBook so that I can use it as a transparent background. And then I also like to make sure I always save a copy of my full Procreate file, because if your iPad ever crashes, you will lose everything in Procreate if you have to replace it. So I always take my Procreate file and share it to my cloud or files or Dropbox or wherever, so I have a copy I can come back to should I ever have an iPad issue. Always a good idea. And then one other thing that's really helpful that I learned just last year, that Procreate always takes a video of your process, which takes up a huge amount of memory on your iPad. So if you don't need that recording for whatever reason, come to video in your actions panel, the little wrench, and just delete it and click purge. And that's gonna make your files so much smaller and take up way less storage on your iPad. So you'll notice that Procreate and your iPad in general will move faster. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Again, in the guide, you can kind of see the other things that I did. I would love to see what you create with it. Tag me on Instagram at @ByDawnNicole, and happy creating.